Hi everyone, welcome to Alternative Reborn Mummy. This is the beautiful Tiffany sculpt by Dawn Bowie. She's a full silicone African American baby, a doll that is. And her artist is Renee Mack from Renee Mack Studios on Etsy. I'm just absolutely over the moon and I wanted to share her details with you, but it was a little bit hard to change her out of her jumpsuit with one hand. So here she is. She's an 18-inch preemie doll, and she's so peaceful. She's got beautiful marshmallow or Eco Flex 20, I'm not completely sure, silicone. She's so soft. She really does squish. And you can see she has beautiful veining and mottling, which is actually really hard to achieve on an ethnic baby. She's got hand-rooted eyelashes, and she's just got the sweetest ears. She's got a I'm just moving the light over here a bit. She's got hand-rooted hair. You can see here it's like thin, like it would be on a real baby, and the alpaca hair that's used is wavy, which is also really suitable for an ethnic baby. What else can I say? She has a beautiful belly button, which is so cute. And her hands are spread out. Which are just gorgeous, all her little fingers. She has lovely little feet, little folds. She has a really sweet little round belly, which is so squishable. You're so cute. Yes, you are. And she's so soft, it almost feels like skin. It's just a little bit cooler to the touch than human skin would be. If we just turn her over, she's got her neck is all joined. There's no ball joint neck in the sense that her head and her body are joined together. She's an anatomically correct female. Unfortunately, I can't show you, she's just a doll, but you kind of get the idea of what's going on there. She's got a cute little, all the parts that a little girl has. So it's really amazing. And when you hold her, because she's so small, you just feel that, if you're a doll collector, that is, you just feel that kind of maternal, beautiful feeling. She's so, she just really fits in your arms snug like a reborn does. So I'm really just feeling so blessed and happy. Oh, I love holding them, and maybe I'll just give her a little feed. So the way you care for silicone dolls is you never put a vinyl doll next to them, because the vinyl is oil-based and the silicone is water-based, and the vinyl will break down the silicone. You never put them in the sunlight. You never put them on natural fibers like wool or, cloth that's got a strong color in it. Yeah, also, sometimes you might notice after a year or two that the finish, which is like a kind of stops the shine, the protective layer of paint, the final paint that goes on a silicone doll, starts to come off, especially if you're putting pacifiers in their mouth. So you need to put powder on the baby when you notice a shine popping up every now and then. Don't use normal baby powder. Use special silicone powder that you can get from your doll artist. You can get it on Etsy or Reborn Communities. Or also you could just use unadulterated, pure, very fine cornstarch or corn flour, I believe it is. You can just ask your artist to be sure. But you really don't need very much. You just add a really small amount every now and then. Powdering the babies with baby powder is not a great idea. I've learned from experience, because the baby powder kind of grazed the sealant on one of my reborn silicone dolls. So she's got a beautiful weight about her. She's just, and you can see she moves very naturally, you know, she's got that kind of, that movement of a real baby. She's gorgeous. I love this hobby. They're just so peaceful, and the art of them is really amazing. So, you know, there's lots of things you can do with a silicone doll. You have to be really careful, especially like open-fingered babies like this one. You have to be really careful when you're dressing them that a finger doesn't get caught in the clothes. It's very easy to rip them off. And you need to be very careful, like if you have an animal in the house, especially a puppy or a child, a small child, because they're really not made for children. Maybe children over 12, they're probably okay. But for really small children, it's really not a good idea. And these are really expensive art dolls. There are dolls that are more affordable for children, say below 10, like Ashton Drake, and probably maybe above 8 or 9. You know, they can have the cheaper end reborn dolls. But, you know, I wouldn't be giving a silicone doll to a child like below the age of 11, which, you know, they're also quite expensive. So, but you can always try and find a secondhand one on Dollfan, but they're still quite pricey. And reborn dolls are actually just as beautiful and look even more realistic. It's just that silicone dolls have that beautiful softness. Some people like to bathe their dolls, but I wouldn't bathe them too often, and I wouldn't use any kind of soap. I never have bathed my silicone dolls because I just want to, I might wipe them down with a wet cloth or something if they're a bit dusty, but I would never bathe them. I'm just too worried that the paint would come off. So other fun things you can do with your silicone doll, apart from dressing them up and maybe going for an outing if you're brave, wrapping them up well in a stroller. You know, sometimes people don't realize they're a doll. Is like feed them with these really sweet bottles. So I've got a bit of shadow going on here, so trying to avoid the shadow. Have some milk, little baby girl. And you can make milk out of water and some sorbeline cream or like cheap moisturizer. And you just mix it together, and then you put a bit of super glue or silicone gel on the top. So if you have a reborn doll, you don't want to put the silicone top of the nipple onto her mouth because that will take off the paint. But if you have a silicone doll, it's fine. And I don't use pacifiers just because I'm also afraid of my silicone doll getting damaged. But I have pierced the ears of my silicone dolls, and that's not very hard. You just have to have a good aim and make sure it's straight. Some silicone dolls have drink and wet systems. Oh, was that good? Was that good? If I didn't have one hand free, I'd pick her up and burp her. But as it is, I have one hand. Yeah, would you like to get dressed now? So now we have this lovely pink dress. Let's see if we can do this with both hands. So this is a beautiful handmade dress with I think that's called smocking. I'm not sure though. But these kind of dresses are very handmade items, are very much available on Etsy. Yes, it's not easy to do this one-handed. I need a tripod that's a bit better. Okay, so sometimes having those little gloves for babies as well can really help. Personally, I just feel I enjoy the reborn hobby because I think part of me does want a child, but I don't really want a child 24 hours a day with the work that is involved. And I think the world probably has enough children. So I enjoy this hobby. You know, I get to hold babies and look at the beautiful art. I know it's not the same as having a real child, but it's also a lot less work than having a real baby. No 5 a.m. feeds, no nappy changing. And I fully respect those people who love doing that. And I think it's a really rewarding path. But for me, being an auntie and reborn dolls are enough. And I also rescue animals and run an NGO, so I think I'm pretty happy. But yeah, reborn dolls and silicone dolls are so addictive. You know, I just got into the hobby a year ago, and my collection has gone up exponentially. So here she is in her beautiful smocking. She's so sweet, looking very lovely. And so another topic I thought I'd bring up just before we finish is body positivity or fat acceptance. So this topic tends to polarize a lot of people because, you know, a lot of people have internalized body standards that say if you're not meeting the ideal super thin size that is shown in the fashion magazines, you must be unhealthy, you must be lazy. But I think this is a really interesting topic to talk about, especially for women, but also for men as well. And to examine our prejudice, because, you know, most women in the world are actually, in the developed world anyway, are above size 16. That's Australian. I don't know what that would be in American, but it's, you know, curvy. And I just know myself as a larger size woman that I was hating myself since I was a teenager because I didn't fit into the magazine ideal of a woman. When I look back on the photos where I was hating myself, I actually wasn't fat. And how much of our lives do we waste believing what other people tell us about our own validity, about our own beauty, about our right to take up space in the world, to enjoy our body, to enjoy our sensuality, to be empowered. And I just think there are better things we can do with our time than police our own bodies and other women's bodies. And maybe, you know, we need to examine the fat hate we have, the fat phobia we have. Like there's memes going around now when we all come out of lockdown, we're going to be fat, you know, so fat bodies are scapegoated as a joke, as seen as something incredibly undesirable. At least maybe there's certain communities in Africa or amongst certain ethnic groups, being larger size is considered a desirous thing, like certainly in Mauritania, they force feed girls before they get married, so they're nice and curvy. But in most cultures, being larger sized is not considered desirable, or that change, you know, that fashion changes over time. I know 20 years ago in India, people really did like a curvy woman, but now they tend to prefer a more slim woman. And if a woman, like if a video is made about a woman that is body positive, that is accepting her for her, the way she is, whether she's pear-shaped or hourglass-shaped, or she's just straight up and down, whether she has, you know, a large chest or a smaller chest, or she's tall or she's small, you know, if it's especially about a larger size woman, there will be so much health concern trolling, saying, oh, you know, it's great that she's comfortable in her own skin, but what about her health? You know, we don't want to glorify obesity. You know, and people say that, you know, there's so many unconscious associations with being larger size. For example, one, that you're undesirable, that you're not sexual, that you're not beautiful, that you're not worthy, that you need to exercise right away, that you can only accept yourself if you're trying to lose weight, that you must hate yourself, and kind of, yeah, so many ideas that are really actually quite strong in our culture. And you'll see a lot of men who openly say they really don't want any fatties, or people who make derogatory jokes about fat people, because, you know, at least amongst decent people, racism and sexism is no longer considered appropriate as a form of humor. So fat people are the last bastion of, I'm not saying racism doesn't exist, it's still a huge problem, and so does sexism, but, you know, being down on fat people and treating them as less than human and ridiculing them because they're lazy, so-called lazy slobs who can't, you know, it's like they're dirty, they have no self-discipline. These are the kind of cliches about fat people. And you may say, oh, well, that's just not true. But I tell you, most people who are larger sized, And I use the term fat not as a derogatory term, but just as a kind of factual statement that women who are larger size are fat. And if you look at fat acceptance, you'll see most women within the movement are using that term fat to kind of reclaim it for themselves. But we consider the term obesity to be derogatory. I know some people will say, well, that's just a medical term. But the body weight index is actually from 100 years ago when most people were much smaller than they are now. And there can be a variety of reasons why a woman is larger sized. It might be genetic. She might have a thyroid problem. She might have a health problem. And really, whatever it is, it's none of our business. We need to ask ourselves, why do we use, the term fat B ... CH as an insult, but we don't, like, if we're so concerned about the so-called epidemic of obesity, why aren't we concerned about people who smoke and drink? Why isn't the term smoking B ... CH an insult? Why is only fat B ... an insult? We have to ask ourselves that. Why don't we troll the movies and the Facebook posts of people who smoke and say, you're so horrible, you're so lazy, you have no self-control, I would never date you, you're gross. Why don't we constantly write on the pages of people who we think are unhealthy about how we're concerned about their health? Why don't we give them unwanted statistics on lack of health, And just to assume that someone's health status by looking at them rather than actually doing blood tests. I mean, there are actually larger size people who go to hospital and are patronized by doctors or nurses and told that every problem they have is as a result of being fat without actually the test being done, And, sometimes people actually have a problem that is unrelated to the fact that they are larger size. It's possible. So just kind of telling every fat person, I know a great diet. Actually, the diet industry is $1 billion industry. They really don't care about our well-being. They're making money out of women hating themselves. The fashion industry is kind of based on the same thing, this idea of unattainability. Fashion has never really been about women's well-being. It's been about an unattainable goal. Like in a society where everybody's larger size, the goal will be thin, eternally young. In a poorer society like Mauritania, the desired goal is large, and curvy, because that's a sign of wealth. That's a sign of prestige. So, why do we twist ourselves into the male gaze, into what someone else's idea of beauty? What happened to being a person of character? What happened to, these young girls who have a brain from the time that they're quite young? We're giving them mixed messages. We're on one hand saying, yes, education is important, being intelligent is important, but then, all the pop culture, all the videos, which are practically pornographic, and sexualize young girls, and the fashion magazines give the girls this message that your superficial beauty is the only thing of value here. And the value that men put on your body is what adds value to you as a human being. We really need to re-examine our concept of beauty, because this idea of beauty we have is not, by the time you're 40, you're pretty much out of that game, out of that league. You start to age and it's just natural. The only beauty that does not fade is a kind and compassionate heart. So we really need to stop sticking people into narrow slots. A lot of girls develop terrible eating disorders because they're constantly monitored, and judged and tortured and talked about. Fat people's bodies are not public property. What we do with our bodies is our own private business. And really, there are thin people. There are a lot of thin people who are actually quite unhealthy, who don't exercise, who don't have a healthy diet, but we don't troll their pages saying, oh yeah, but you're unhealthy. That's so unfortunate. You must be lazy. I know a great diet for you. We don't troll those people's pages. What we do is we actually get a sense of superiority, a sense of making ourselves feel better, of treating a fat person as less than, by setting ourselves above them and saying, well, obviously you're not a winner in life, you're not successful, you're not valuable as a human being. We can patronize you, we can infantilize you, we can talk about you as if you're not in the room, because being fat means that you don't deserve basic human decency. So that's the issue. Think about when you're talking, oh, obesity is not healthy. You're not a doctor. And fat people know if they want the information, they'll seek it for themselves. And you don't know about their health just by looking at them. You need to, actually, in order to know a person's health status, they need to be tested in various things. You don't know their fitness level. You don't know what they've gone through. And I can tell you that fat people probably know more about food and calories and what is in everything. In fact, 98% of diets that are tried fail. So we don't need that information. We know that information, We're experts in probably going on diets and hiding diets and crash diets and exercise routines, And it's also just natural that over time, especially when women become middle-aged, that they've had a few children, they just put on a few more pounds, And it's so ironic that women, after they've done this amazing, miraculous thing with their body, they've had a child, they've given life to the universe. They really should be worshipped as a goddess. But the first thing we do to reduce them as women, reduce them as human beings, is say to them, okay, now you need to get off the baby fat, as if your value as a human being equates to what the scales tell you, which is just nonsense, really. I think as women, we need to take our power back as men and look at people deeper, learn to love with a more wide and loving heart. If someone can't love you because you're larger sized, it says more about you. It says more about them and their shallowness and their judgmentalness than it does about you or your value as a human being. Because at the end of the day, you can be with someone who looks like Barbie. If Barbie was a woman, she actually wouldn't physically be able to stand up. But you could be with someone who looks like Barbie, but if at the end of the day, if they're not a kind person, if they don't have integrity, probably the relationship isn't going to last that long anyway, And really, women's bodies are their own private business. We need to stop thinking that we have public ownership or that men can reduce women to sex objects. It's sexist, it's discriminatory, it's degrading and trolling behavior. Let live, because really fat people do face a great amount of discrimination in finding everywhere they go, people are secretly judging them, finding, like, everywhere you go in the shops, you can't find your size of clothes. And people say, well, this is your choice. Some people don't have a choice. That no matter how much they try, they fail. And it's like, why should they kind of have to live their lives apologizing for who they are? You may not approve of fatness, but you just keep it to yourself. We don't want to know. Our bodies are our business. Our bodies are not public property, and we deserve to be treated with the same respect as everybody else. So that's my my take on body positivity. And that also means, body positivity also means not being ableist. It means respecting disabled people, body diversity, trying to widen the circle of people you would date, being pro disabled rights or other able people, trying to get them access. It also means looking at issues around, like, the preference for fairness in cultures where people have dark skin, or the preference for narrow Aryan features, for kind of, it's all part of white dominance, which is really quite an unhealthy history of what has happened to people of color. So embracing yourself for who you are, Black is beautiful, or whatever you are is beautiful. And it doesn't mean hating on thin people, hating on white people, hating on people who are young and do meet so-called normal beauty standards. But what it does mean is widening your circle of love, being more accepting, empowering yourself for who you are, loving yourself as you are with all your flaws, and knowing that you're a goddamn goddess warrior. Just be proud of it and own it. So, that and understanding the structural violence that people who do not conform to the white, young, thin, privileged face, and having more empathy for that, because actually looks do impact your earning capacity, unconscious racism, unconscious sexism, unconscious fat phobia, unconscious ableism make the lives of people who are not that, which is actually the majority of people, and not the white, thin, beautiful standard, so-called beautiful standard. And if that is not most people, why are we holding ourselves to something that makes us miserable? Let's tear it down. Let's embrace diversity. Let's see the beauty in everyone. So I just want you to know that I think diversity is what is beautiful. If you look in nature, look at giraffes, look at elephants, look at jaguars. They're all completely different, but they all perform a function in the scheme of things. They're all part of the web of life. Diversity is beautiful. And if everyone was the same, the world would be a really boring place. So embrace and love yourself for who you are. So thank you so much. It went a little bit long, but this is my beautiful baby, Anushka. And I'll see you next time. All the best. Bye.